Hey everyone, welcome back to Corporate Decoder, the place where we try to make sense of the money games of big companies and maybe find a juicy piece of insider info or not. But hey, at least we'll be looking at the numbers, right? Today we are diving into the semi-annual shareholder report for Pzena Investment Management's funds. Let's see what Pzena's funds have been up to in the latter half of 2025. Before we dive in, if you like getting straight to the point with financial filings, make sure to subscribe. And hey, we have a growing community over on our Discord server, which you can find in the description below, where we chat all things corporate finance. Alright, so this report is a bit different from your typical company earnings release. It's filed with the US Securities and Exchange Commission, or the SEC, and it's a rundown of how these investment funds are doing. Think of it like a report card for mutual funds. We're looking at reports for several Pzena funds covering the period from March 2025 to August 2025. Let's start with the Pzena Mid-Cap Value Fund Investor Class. They're telling us about the cost for a hypothetical $10,000 investment. For this class, the cost over 6 months came out to $65, which is 1.25% of that hypothetical investment. For key stats, the fund had over $103 million in net assets with 40 holdings. Their net advisory fee was around $377,000 and portfolio turnover was 16%. What were they invested in? The top 10 holdings as of the 31st of August 2025 included names like Humana Inc. at 5.6%, Advance Auto Parts Inc. at 5.1%, and Dollar General Corp. at 3.9%. Baxter International Inc. also made the cut. Now let's look at the Pzena Emerging Markets Value Fund Investor Class. For a hypothetical $10,000 investment, the cost was $78 or 1.43%. This fund is much larger with over $2.8 billion in net assets and 65 holdings. Their advisory fees for the period were a hefty $12 million. In the Emerging Markets Value Fund, the top holdings show a strong focus on Asia. Samsung Electronics Company Limited was 4.3%, and Taiwan Semiconductor Manufacturing Company Limited, or TSMC, was at 4.0%. Other big names included China Overseas Land and Investment Limited, Alibaba Group Holding Limited, and Tencent Holdings Limited. Moving on to the Pzena Small Cap Value Fund Investor Class, cost for a $10,000 investment was $69 or 1.31%. This fund is smaller with about $46 million in net assets and 49 holdings. Their advisory fees totaled just over $100,000. The top holdings here are more domestic. Advance Auto Parts Inc. was in the lead at 4.3%, followed by Adient plc at 3.7%, and Resido Technologies Inc. at 3.6%. Next up, the Pzena International Small Cap Value Fund Investor Class. Cost was $75 for a hypothetical $10,000 investment, or 1.33%. This fund is a bit larger than the Small Cap Value Fund, sitting at around $195 million in net assets with 46 holdings, and advisory fees were about $636,000. Internationally, their top holdings included Origin Enterprises plc at 3.8%, One IP's Company Limited at 3.5%, and Signify NV at 3.3%. It's interesting to see a mix of global companies here, showing diversification is key for this fund. Finally, the Pzena International Value Fund Investor Class. The costs here for a $10,000 investment were $54 or 1.00%. This fund has about $116 million in net assets with 68 holdings. Advisory fees were around $264,000. Their top international value plays included Daimler Truck Holding AG at 2.9%, Rexel Saar at 2.7%, and Basse at 2.6%. It seems like a strong European tilt for this fund. Now for the main event, the financial tables, let's peek into the schedule of investments for the Pzena Mid-Cap Value Fund. As of the 31st of August 2025, their total investments were valued at over $103 million. With a cost basis of around $91 million, that shows a decent unrealized gain. A big chunk of this fund is in common stocks, making up 98.4% of the portfolio. Looking at the specific holdings, their consumer discretionary sector holds a large portion, including significant positions in Adient plc, Advance Auto Parts Inc., Dollar General Corp., and Magna International Inc. In the industrial sector, the healthcare sector also represents a substantial part of their portfolio, with holdings in Baxter International Inc., Fresenius Medical Care AG and Company KGR AGR, Henry Schein Inc., and most notably Humana Inc., representing over 5.8% of the fund's net assets as of that date. Let's jump to the Pzena Emerging Markets Value Fund. This is where things get interesting. Their total investments are valued at over $2.8 billion. The cost of these investments was close to $2.45 billion. Common stocks make up 92.3% of this fund. Their China exposure is significant at 23.4%. We see major tech players like Alibaba Group Holding, Limited, and Tencent Holdings, Limited alongside real estate and consumer brands. They also have a substantial presence in the Republic of Korea with Samsung Electronics Company, Limited being a major holding. In Brazil, Vale SA is a notable holding, along with Ambev SA and B3 SA Brazil Bolsa Balcão. The diversification here is pretty broad, which is expected for an emerging markets fund. Looking at the overall financial health across these funds, we see the mid-cap value fund with net assets of over $103 million. The emerging markets value fund is vastly larger, with nearly $2.84 billion in net assets. The small cap value fund is much smaller, around $46 million. And the international small cap value and international value funds hover around $195 million and $116 million respectively. For example, in the mid-cap value fund, 100% of the net assets come from paid in capital and total distributable earnings, which is a healthy sign. The same goes for the other funds, showing solid asset backing. Let's quickly glance at the statements of operations. For the 6 months ending the 31st of August 2025, the Pzena Mid-Cap Value Fund reported net investment income of over $969,000. The Emerging Markets Value Fund, due to its size and higher dividend yields commonly found in emerging markets, reported a massive $63 million in net investment income. The small cap fund brought in about $308,000. The real action is often in realized and unrealized gains. The mid-cap value fund saw net realized gains of over $5 million, but a significant increase in unrealized appreciation, adding over $9 million. The Emerging Markets Value Fund had a whopping $65 million in net realized gains and over $278 million in unrealized appreciation. That is a massive jump. Now let's look at the financial highlights per S-Hair. For the mid-cap value fund, investor class, the net asset value per S-Hair at the end of the period was $12.81. Total return for the 6-month period was a solid 6.31%. The expense ratios are a key point for investors. For the mid-cap value fund investor class after fee waivers, the ratio of expenses to average net assets was 1.25%. This is important because it shows the effective cost of holding the fund. It's good to see they're managing those expenses. For the Emerging Markets Value Fund investor class, the net asset value per S-Hair reached $14.49, and the total return for the 6 months was a very strong 17.23%. Their expense ratio after waivers was 1.43%. This is a bit higher than the mid-cap value fund, but it's typical for emerging markets funds, which often have higher operating costs and risks. Diving into the notes, we learn about their investment advisory fees. The rates vary by fund, with the mid-cap value fund at 0.80% and the emerging markets value fund at 1.00%. Pzena Investment Management has agreed to waive fees to limit the expense ratios. For the mid-cap value fund, after waivers, the expense limit is 0.90%, and for emerging markets, it is 1.08%. This shows a commitment to manage costs for investors. Now, let's talk about risks. This is super important. The report outlines several principal risks. Currency risk is a big one, especially for the international funds, meaning changes in foreign exchange rates can impact the value of investments. Emerging markets risk is also highlighted, noting that these markets are generally riskier due to political instability, less regulation, and lower liquidity. Equity securities risk is standard, meaning stock prices can go up or down unpredictably. They also detail foreign securities risk, which includes political and economic developments, trading practices, and availability of information. TRI is also general market risk, which acknowledges that economies and financial markets worldwide are interconnected, meaning events in one region can impact others. They specifically mention the ongoing conflict in Europe and the Middle East as contributing factors to market volatility. This is a critical point. And management risk, which is pretty straightforward. The funds rely on the advisor's skill, and there is no guarantee their decisions will always be right. For the small cap funds, they specifically call out small cap company risk, noting that smaller companies tend to be more volatile and less liquid than larger ones. Looking broadly at these reports, Pzena's funds seem to be performing according to their objectives for the period ending August 2025. The mid-cap value and emerging markets value funds in particular show substantial unrealized gains, suggesting strong performance from their underlying investments. The international funds also show healthy asset growth and diversification. What's my take? Pzena is clearly managing its portfolio with a value-oriented strategy, aiming for long-term growth. The fee waivers are a good sign that they're trying to keep costs down for investors, especially in the more complex emerging markets and international segments. The report highlights significant risks, particularly in emerging markets and due to global geopolitical events. These are not minor risks. They can significantly impact fund performance. The strong performance in the 6 months ending August 2025 is encouraging, but investors should always remember that past performance is not a guarantee of future results, especially with the volatile nature of emerging markets and the ongoing global uncertainties. Alright, that is our deep dive into Pzena's filings. What's your take on these numbers and what they signal for the company's future? Drop your thoughts in the comments. If this analysis was valuable, hitting that like button really helps, and subscribe for more deep dives. Don't forget to check out the Discord in the description. Thanks for watching, see you next time.